Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment, and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined here by my friend Laura, all the way down from the south of New Zealand. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here with me. And as I do with all of our guests, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for having me on. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and even better to be able to share some of my experience. So who am I? Well, professionally, I'm a sexual wellness coach. I specialize in holistic sex education, and I really, really love working with women to help them reconnect to their bodies, to their feminine essence, and create a life that's based in pleasure and feminine well-being. And then I guess personally, I'm really just I'm a human. I'm like an avid explorer of all things health and wellness. I'm really passionate about getting every last drop of juice out of life. And just a really curious explorer of the human psyche and what it means to, live a happy, healthy, turned on life in this day and age. So yeah, that's me.
And would you be able to share a little bit on, especially on this topic? We have well-being, health, feminism, or feminine energy more than feminism, and pleasure and sex, all topics that I want to explore. But would you be able to share what has been your journey with this in terms of, growing up? Was this something for you, all of these topics that were openly talked about in your family, in your circles, or is this something that you had to discover in your own journey?
Yeah, so I'm very much on the side of, your mess becomes your message. And I definitely grew up in a very sexually suppressed culture. I went to a private Catholic boarding school, and there was a lot of shame around sex or sensuality, femininity. Even going further than that, it wasn't even just about sex. It was about being a confident woman. Even that, being a strong, beautiful, confident woman who had a sense of love for herself was, not really celebrated. It was very traditional in a sense of, be quiet, kind of like behave, be good, stand in line, don't rock the boat, be a good housewife kind of vibes, I guess. And I think for me, my journey really began in mental health. So for me, I've really struggled with my mental health all throughout my life. In the last sort of 5 years, I guess I've really gotten a good hold of it, due to all the work that I've been doing and tools that I've been integrating. But yeah, I had really, really bad anxiety when I was even as young as in primary school. Depression, really crippling depression. I've, been fired from multiple jobs because I haven't been able to show up to work, and my relationships have failed because, my mental health was in the floor, and my sense of love for myself and my worth was in my shoes, essentially. And I guess when it comes to sex and sexuality, I think I really used it as a measurement tool of my worth in the world. And it was just a really sort of big kind of ego death when I realized that the sexually empowered, promiscuous version of myself, even though I was like really confident and I was really having beautiful sexual experiences, but I was also having a lot of the flip side of that. And in essence, regardless of whether I was having quote unquote fun or not, all of my experiences were rooted in low self-worth. So there was this underlying tone of despair in a way. There was really something missing. And there just came a point in my life when, my mental health got to a point where I just couldn't function anymore. It was really affecting my relationships, my ability to earn money, and just everything in my life basically. And I'd kind of had enough. I sort of had that, the clouds part, the sun shines through, the eagles like fly above your head like moments. I had one of those moments, and I just really decided there and then that I wasn't going to live like that anymore, and that I would stop at nothing to change my situation, to change who I was and how I was feeling about myself. And yeah, that's where it all started. Mental health, learning about self-love, which led to changing my diet. And so I actually studied integrative nutrition at IIN to become a coach. So that was the beginning of my journey, really working with food. And the more I leant into that, I realized, that it's not just kale that feeds us. We have, there are so many aspects to health and well-being that are, just as important as everything else. And sexuality was something that I was, passionate about because it had been a big part of my personal healing experience. But also something that I felt really comfortable talking about. I'm a Scorpio. I feel like it's kind of, in the stars for me to do this work. And also an area that I felt was like really, really needed. So my mission is to bring, healthy sexuality to the wellness table alongside our yoga pants, alongside our green smoothies, so that we can have, these like integrated conversations around well-being that incorporate relationships and intimacy and pleasure into our lives, because they are all connected. And so much of my work is, I guess from a marketing perspective, there's a lot of talk about sex and sexuality and sensuality, but when you actually distill it all down, it's about mental health, self-love, how you treat yourself, boundaries, really kind of foundational things that have a huge impact on how you connect with yourself and others, physically, energetically, spiritually.
Yeah, so interesting. I think that what you just mentioned just now, like that connection part, is something that underlies everything, and how we connect, as you say, with ourselves, with others around, with our environment, and allowing ourselves to do that. And by allowing ourselves to connect, then we start allowing others to connect to themselves. And by doing that, we start actually becoming that version of ourselves that is the authentic version, the one that we need to bring into this world. And it's always such an interesting thing for me to see how our path is what ends up leading a lot of times into what we're offering. Like, as you say, like your experience of working with all of these tools is what led you to then saying like, oh, actually, working with this, with myself, this has benefit for others. And I would love to know, how do you see here in New Zealand and in other places around the world, with people that you talk to in general and with some of your clients, what is the main thing that you see culturally and how people connect with themselves in these ways?
So just so I understand, so like what is the sort of like the biggest pain point that people are coming to me with?
Yeah, and like also like, and this is partly because I have a little bit of I'm kind of like new in New Zealand. What do you see in terms of like openness and like about these topics as well?
Yeah, okay. It's a funny one because I have clients from all around the world, and so to really, I think so I can kind of answer this in two parts, I would say. So like the sort of, I feel like the main piece for everyone's, and especially like women in New Zealand, is everyone's so busy. Like
Mm.
everyone's really busy, and busyness is like such a status symbol. And I feel like, with this whole like rise of, women in the workplace and femininity, as we have, women stepping into an old paradigm essentially of work, that, and men, this isn't even about women specifically, but it's leading to burnout. It's leading to disconnect from the body essentially. And this isn't about being spiritual or woo-woo. This is like really quite simple. There's so much science behind it. We're spending a lot of time in our heads, behind screens. Our schedules are full. There's so many distractions, social media, there's so much going on that draws us away from how we're feeling internally. And then on top of that, we haven't been taught, emotional resilience skills at school or in life. And so it's no surprise that we are becoming foreigners to our own body and living in our minds, living in that constant state of, high beta, like sympathetic nervous system, where your heart rate is quite high, you're a little bit anxious, and so on and so forth. And so over time, that's going to really like separate you from your body and from, your sense of self, your authentic self. And then within New Zealand specifically, I feel like we're still quite a conservative culture in many ways. And I think that these types of conversations are becoming more and metropolitan areas. But yeah, like at the end of the day, New Zealand is still like a small country at the end of the map. And we can be quite behind in many ways. And so I think that, these conversations are really sort of slow to take to the mainstream. So we're getting there. And there's becoming more and more like beautiful safe spaces and amazing women like myself and like many others now in New Zealand who are creating like the foundations for women here and men to explore intimacy and connection and healthy relationships. Yeah.
And how does it compare, as you say, like, you're working with women from all around the world. How do you compare it with, this is just my view from a very ignorant place. That is that in the Western world, even in countries that are less conservative than New Zealand, there's still a lot of disconnection from our body, from our feelings, and from that openness. How do you see in the other countries that?
So like, do I see a difference between New Zealand and other cultures?
Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, not really. I think that's because I like attract a certain type of woman who is like already experiencing these symptoms and are very much like living in the Western world. I really work with a lot of like high performing women who, you know, like love playing a big game in the world, who are into health and wellness, have a lot of information, but they're kind of like missing this like embodiment piece, like the integration piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like even on my travels, like culturally, there are so many differences between us all, but when it comes to my work, I think we're all experiencing the same thing, which is this disconnection from each other. And I think that that's universal. And it would be hard to really kind of boil down to culture. At least in the Western world. I'm sure there's other countries that would be.
And I think you know, there's like this thing of talking in families and in perhaps schools or with friends about sex and these topics. It's such a taboo that then doesn't allow people to then be able to talk about it and to process and integrate their experience. It doesn't allow people, both men and women, to actually be able to explore and to actually understand, you know, like, is this in a sense normal, or is this, you know, like whatever, is this like something that I want to explore or not, and asking other people for their views or whatever it is. And just being able to actually talk about something has a big impact as well on that. And I was wondering, like, do you find that is it certain words that are sometimes the issues, like saying, I don't know, like penis or vagina or whatever it is, or is it like way deeper than the actual words for some people?
That's such a great question. I mean, like, certain words hold a lot of charge for various people. I mean, like women, I'll speak to women right now as an example, but this is like unisex. Women who have, you know, disconnected from this part of their body, or they might feel like from their vagina, say, like perhaps there's like a you know, like they feel like their natural scent is disgusting, or, you know, it doesn't look, you know, their vulva looks funny or doesn't look perfect. They, you know, put this part of themselves down and further disconnect from it, which can also create this charge behind the name of what it is. And then I guess, like, on top of that, with various slang names and things like that, but they can be derogative or insulting, or they could trigger someone to a time when they were in high school and got called this name or got teased for this thing, or, you know, it's really complex. I think slut is a really, really big one. There can be a lot of charge around that. It's a really interesting word. And I feel like it's really up to us as individuals to sort of understand, like, where our own like shame is with these words. Like, why do we hold that kind of, like, when I talk about charge, I talk about like that kind of overwhelming emotional somatic bodily response that comes up when you hear it. So anyone who's listening, if they hear the word pussy and have this, you know, this really like, ugh, kind of like their body really reacts, you know, that's a cue for you to, you know, run a self-inquiry around, you know, why that quite, you know, severe reaction is there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go around, you know, using pussy all the time, but it is obviously triggering something, and it'll be because of your experience and things that have happened and ways that word has been used and how it's hurt you in your life. And so I think like all things, when words are triggering us and like making us have this sense of disgust or shame, it's an opportunity to really lean in and unpack what's behind that, to, you know, give us some more space and give us some more room to breathe and, you know, create a more loving and accepting relationship with these words and these parts of our bodies, these beautiful parts of our bodies.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, it's interesting, and something that you mentioned as well before about, you know, having that confidence and having that understanding of your own experience and being, in a sense, okay with them. And I love what you said. Like, for me, inquiry into the things that show up for me, for my life, in whatever place it is, actually questioning and trying to unpack, like, you know, like, why does this like make some noise or brings this feeling of, you know, like, ugh, or whatever it is. And a lot, I think, that has to do, and especially with this topic, on the fact that this there has been a lot of repression. There's a lot of confidence issues, and what you were just saying with that, you know, like, some people, and I know this from growing up, like, I was quite different than a lot of my friends, and for like quite a while there, I thought, you know, like, am I the weird one? Or, you know, like, I wasn't as, in a sense, like, promiscuous, or like, I wasn't seeking sex. And I was like, you know, like, is there something wrong? You know, like, or is it okay to be the way that I am? And I think that, you know, by being able for me to talk with my parents about this, like, it was easy for me to understand, you know, this is the way that I like to explore this part of my life. There's a huge importance into this aspect of my life, but I don't need to be like other people or what I see on TV, or, you know, like, all of these other things. And especially, I think that for younger, like, teenage people, that now porn, it's such a, a big accessible thing, which it wasn't when I was a kid, or a teenager. Like, how that changes, like, mind frame of validation, and just, you know, like, being able to do stuff that, like, people see. I wonder, like, and I'm curious about your take on porn and that aspect of things.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I love that. And okay, so much to say. Yeah, it's really funny. A lot of people who I work with come to me saying that they want to have more sex, feel sexier, you know, like, please their partner more, have more sex with their partner. They're not having enough sex, like, da 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 da. And I actually, the first thing I ask them is, you know, invite them to just, you know, take a couple of big deep breaths, put their hand over their womb, and actually really ask themselves, like, do I really want a lot of sex right now? Is that what my body really needs? And a lot of the time it's no, they need a break.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we live in this culture that really celebrates sex and just I don't want to say in the wrong way, but I think it portrays sex in the wrong way. You know, so many people ask me, like, how often should I be having sex in a healthy relationship? And, you know, like, what's wrong with me? I don't feel, I have a low libido and all of this stuff. And I think it's really beautiful to actually relax and trust our bodies when we're going through winter seasons in our sexuality, because we're cyclic beings as humans, and it's only natural to go through these phases of being quiet, actually, and restoring and regenerating. Another point is, it's quality, not quantity. and there is no number when it comes to how much sex you should or shouldn't be having, actually. What my definition of, I guess, like healthy sexuality, or, you know, a healthy sex life, is one that is rooted in pleasure. And what that means is that you are engaging in the physical act of sex as an expression of love, as an expression of, you know, the overflow of pleasure and sensation that you're experiencing with another person. And when you come from a place of fullness like that, the sort of desire or the craving or that like really lusty, I guess, kind of that like needy, quote, needy urge, I've got to have sex kind of vibe, really dissipates, because you're actually feeling fulfilled and happy in your life, and sex is a celebration of that. And when it comes to porn, I'm so not here to shame porn whatsoever. I think it can be a beautiful tool when used properly. But I think what the dangers of porn is that it's essentially become a lot of people's only source of education when it comes to sex. And again, sex doesn't look like that. Sex doesn't actually feel like that. And to be honest, the best sex that I've ever had, and when I talk about, you know, having like the best sex of your life, it hasn't been done before. It's never, you can't watch it in a porno and get instructions of it. There's no 1, 2, 3 tips and tools of like how to have a multi-orgasmic experience. Like all it really is deep presence. That's what it is. It's really, truly deep presence, being in your body, and, you know, again, like coming from that expression of love and overflow within yourself and sharing that with another person. That's when sex is really good. And that's numbers of sex, you know, like how much you're having, like disappear, you know, that's no longer an issue. And I mean, obviously it's more nuanced for that, like everyone, but on an overall high arching level. And and also like when you're really truly present in your body, you're no longer thinking about what this should look like, how I should be behaving, what I should sound like, how I should thrust, how all of these things, how wet I should be, how hard my cock should be, you know, all of these things disappear, and you just drop purely into the pleasure and the experience that you're having right now, regardless of whether you're having penetrative sex, energetic sex, or simply, you know, connecting like really beautifully naked with your partner. I think, you know, we attach orgasm and a heteronormative, penetrative, frictional sex experience and label that as sex. That's what's boil it and distill it down to what we want to feel when we have sex. How do we want to feel in our sexual experiences is, you know, is connected and you know, love and pleasure. And actually, you don't always have to be penetrating someone to feel those things. So I think the dangers with porn is that it gives us a very linear, you know, kind of like one-way ticket to what sex should look like. And there's just so much more than that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, I was just thinking as you were sharing this, how for me, for a long time, I struggled with the word sex because I always felt this time of connection is love making. And it's not sex because of the view that I had of this is sex, like literally like that, what I was saying in porn, like that is sex. And I thought, you know, I don't want that. And that was just me, you know, like I want that connection and I want the feeling. And with that, you know, that it's going back to something that you mentioned earlier, that disconnection from our body and our feelings. And I think that, as you were saying, like we live in a society where we are a lot in our heads. And I'm super grateful that I learned from an early age how to feel, how to actually experience feelings in my body, and to understand, you know, like perhaps touching my arm, like the feeling that I get from touching my arm, or someone else that I love touching my arm, like that feeling could be an amazing feeling. Like, and I would love for you to share a little bit about that aspect, especially like with women and women that you work with. How do you get that coming back to the body piece?
Yeah, yeah. It is everything. It is so everything. And actually, it's even for women, yes, and for men. Like it's we all need this embodiment piece, right? And actually, like in pretty much all of my programs, all of my coaching, the first step is emotional intelligence, embodiment, feelings. That is always the first piece. I very, very rarely work with someone who has already got that nailed down, or at least or an understanding, or you know, experiencing all of your emotions, right? Because what happens, especially in the Western world, is that, you know, we experience an emotion or a feeling in our body, particularly like an uncomfortable one. Perhaps it might be grief or anger or sadness. And we don't want to feel it, right? Because, you know, we need to be happy all the time, or, you know, we don't want to be a downer, or we can't express our rage in a, you know, like socially accepted way, I guess. And so, you know, we can dissociate into our minds, and we leave our bodies, we go into our minds, we make up stories about what these emotions mean, which is where the anxiety comes from. We can overthink things, try to intellectualize things, and try to understand them better so that they can go away. Or we simply put, you know, a gratitude journal practice on top of it, and, you know, try and, you know, flick the switch to, you know, delete these bad feelings and thoughts. When my practice is actually to go in and feel it, and learn that actually feeling sad is great, feeling angry is great. All of these emotions are actually really great. And when we start to really bear them in our bodies, like, oh, like actually sensationally feeling them. You can, like, a great practice that I do is like ask my clients, or the women that I work with, to almost personify this feeling. So it's like, you know, what does it look like? Does it have a texture? Is it green and fuzzy, or is it like a sludgy, muddy, like, character? Does it have a name? Like, what is it? You know, does it tell me more about the feeling? And that kind of gets them really in tune with the specific somatic experience in their body. And that actually helps to ground and calmly disable the, you know, anxiety that comes with these really big, overwhelming emotions, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not the emotion that's bad, it's all of the stories that we attach to it that's bad. You know, the emotion from your past, and then the stories about it that you keep repeating over and over again in your head. Yes, it happened and it feels big, but you're in the present moment now, and this is a totally different experience. And so this might seem a little bit like it's so, aren't we talking about sex and pleasure? Like, why are we talking about this? But the more that we are able to feel, experience, and process our emotions in a way, meaning through the body as opposed to through the mind and intellectualization of the experience, the more we're able to experience pleasure and these orgasmic states, the more you're able to gives you more resilience. And so when you are triggered, when you're going through a really hard time in life, you have this really like deep sense of calm and peaceful groundedness, because it's like these emotions come up, but you don't run off with these like constant stories, go into anxiety, go into your head, and essentially kind of make the situation worse. And that's why that's what mental piece of my work. And this is basic mindfulness, I guess. It's not basic, but it's it's mindfulness. There's been so much research done on the mind body connection, especially when it comes to therapy and all of that sort of stuff. So it's a really, really awesome space to be in. And just like helping people understand that they're safe with their emotions, and they're safe in their bodies.
Awareness of body, awareness of feelings, it's such an important thing. And especially as you were talking, I was thinking of and of course this is not the same work that I do, but when I'm working with my clients, getting back to the body, like it's one of the main things, especially for those that have some trauma, something that happened and it's deeply rooted in the past. And I'm sure that in your line of work and with sexual encounters that depend on what happened in people's life, there could be a lot of trauma, and that is stored in the body. And actually, allowing, as you were saying, allowing the feelings and the sensations, and stepping away from our heads for at least a moment to be able to feel and to experience, to start allowing that energy that is stuck to be processed, because that is where trauma is. It's stuck, and I can't really open myself up if that is still what I'm doing, if I am actually trying to protect that which is that blockage of energy. And I'm curious if you can perhaps talk a little bit about that, about people that have had some kind of traumatic experience. How can they actually open? Can they open, giving a little bit of yes, everything can be healed, or what is your experience with that?
Beautiful. I have worked with quite a few women with PTSD and various with trauma. I don't know, label our traumas, to be honest. I almost want to take that back. It's trauma is a funny thing, because you can't actually label or judge a trauma from 1 being minor, 10 being severe, because it's actually not about the incident itself. It's about how you store it in your body and how you recover from it that makes it severe or quote unquote minor. So people who do have these really big traumatic experiences in their life often actually recover quite well, compared to those who have minor experiences and then can really cover themselves in shame, feeling their trauma isn't that bad and therefore they should not do anything about it, and it actually can lead to more serious effects down the line. So just wanted to throw that in there for people who can get caught up in that. Anyway, so I have a lot of clients with these symptoms, and they often work with me alongside their therapist. which is a really great recommendation. Like, I'm an absolute advocate for therapy, but I think what therapy doesn't really do is touch this body piece that we've been speaking into. And so the sort of work that I do with these people is to really help them feel safe in their bodies again. And that is a bit of a process. You know, it's really just like teaching them the actual like tools and rituals that they can do when they are getting that, you know, that raised heartbeat, you know, the anxiety in the mind, the stories running on repeat, you know, when they start to feel those symptoms running in their bodies, teaching them tools and various things to sort of like regulate their nervous system, manage their thoughts, you know, really discern between what's a story, you know, so like, I guess that inner critic, that one that's telling you all of the things, those horrible things about yourself, understanding that, okay, they're there, but, you know, I'm kind of not going to listen to them right now or anymore. And yeah, like, you know, things like breath work and movement and, you know, really beautiful emotional release tools, like cathartic tools. And so, you know, for people who have this, you know, this like all of this worked up rage, you know, let's talk about sex and boundaries for a moment. Like, I think so many people have had sexual experiences where, you know, they've not necessarily wanted them to. And I'm not even, you know, this could just be when you've had a couple of drinks and you kind of just go along with it because you're already there and you sort of don't want to, but you do it anyway. And it's like, meh. Even though that's not, you know, quote unquote, a severe trauma, that is still a boundary been crossed and you didn't assert it. Yeah. That is in your body. So that yourself at the other person, for that's in your body. And that is, so over time, there comes this block around, you know, asserting boundaries. And like when you go to do it, all of that stuff, all of that emotion, all of that charge comes along with it. So when we're talking about emotional release tools, it's about actually like allowing that emotional charge that's stored in your body from these experiences to come out, to be angry, to be sad, to laugh, to cry, to hit pillows, to like, you know, like scream in the woods, like really actually like finding safe containers for yourself or with somebody else who can like really hold you safe space to really release, like in quite a cathartic and healing way. Because talk therapy is amazing, but it's really through the mind. And sometimes we need a somatic experience to help really complete that trauma and kind of release it through the body. Yeah.
And you know, like I mean, for me, the body and energy has been one of the biggest components of my journey and what I share with people, but as well communication. Like that is so deep, and I think that what you just touched on, boundaries. When I know my boundaries and when I know that I am okay communicating them, and I'm not, you know, I'm not ashamed to communicate what I want or what I don't want, it makes things easier. And I do believe that a lot of the issues that we have in relationships come from that, come from a lack of openness to communicate. And I see this with, you know, like with couples, and I'm sure that you see this as well, as you were saying before, like someone saying like should I be having more sex because I want to pleasure, you know, my partner? Do they want that, or is that just in your head? Like, have you asked them? Like, you know, like that communication part, sometimes it's missing, and it's such a big component of it. Like, is there something with that you share like with your clients? Is that, you know, communicate your boundaries, or communicate like, I want this, like this feels good, or this don't, or not now?
totally. Communication is so big. And that's like relevant whether you're in a relationship or not. Communication, like dating apps, and when you're dating is an amazing fertile land for you to grow and exercise your communication skills and have them, and really grow that trust muscle with yourself, and really assert some like cool new boundaries that are like in alignment for you now. And when it comes to when you are in a relationship, it's again, it's about the tools, isn't it? It's about having a space and a container where you can talk about these things, because sometimes when you're both naked and about to engage, the time to like talk about or give feedback or like kind of talk about like tricky things, especially if it's new to your container, your relationship container. So I really advocate for, I call them love bubbles. I do it with my partner every week. And it's a time for you both to come together in a safe space. And what I mean by that is where this is not a space for arguing. This is a space for listening. It's all about active. So it's not a discussion space. It's somewhere where you are hearing each other and understanding each other, because I'm telling you, people, there is nothing in the world that is a bigger turn-on than being truly heard and understood by someone you love, really. And I think so often in relationships, like, down, like listening to each other, we're not truly seeing each other or hearing each other. And so by, again, creating this safe space, this container to talk, to share what's really is so beneficial. And that's where you can do, I'll share it with, called Fears, Loves and Desires. And it's really great. So you basically, you take turns, you talk about, your fears. So I might have a fear of, I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I do have fears though. I fear that, my partner's American. So I would say, like, perhaps as an example, I fear that you will want to, live in America again. And I don't want to live there. I just made that up off the top of my head. Just things like that, vulnerabilities, things that stories that your mind tells you about your relationship. And then love. Like, what do you love so much about? What do you admire about your partner? And then desires. So this is a great space to talk about, like, things that you're wanting sexually in the bedroom, like how you can feel safer, and like things that you want to do and try out and all that kind of stuff in the bedroom. And yeah, I think that, like, communication in general and relationships is such a big journey. I think practicing and inquiring about nonviolent communication is a really beautiful framework to yourself and, like, with your partner, so that you can talk about these topics that are vulnerable and scary and can be really triggering, in a way that enables like more connection as opposed to disconnection. And that's a journey, and it's a practice, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it's something that you guys do together and have fun with and make mistakes doing it, and learn and grow together. Yeah. And I think like when it comes to sex and sexuality, this is where like a lot of healing can come in and take place. I mean, when you have this, beautiful relationship of communication with your partner, and you're able to share these hard truths and be heard, when you're able to communicate your desires and they be respected, and not put down or judged or shamed, that really enables a lot of heart opening. And that also really enables a really beautiful sexual experience together. And it also enables more vulnerability in your sexual experiences. I wonder if there's any women listening and perhaps they're with their partner who they love so dearly, but he might, thrust like deeper and hit the cervix, and then all of a sudden she's triggered and having a flashback to, X many years ago when that person did it when, she wasn't really enjoying it or whatever. And then again, that charge is there. There's something in there, and she's repulsed. She wants him to get off, there's that experience. But this is where the sexual healing can take place, because you're with someone who can hold you in that, and you're able to be together in that. You're able to cry during sex. You're able to be angry during sex and like hit the cushions next to your partner, or like act like wild animals. I don't know, like howl at each other. I don't know. Like, this is the thing, and this is why porn is so limiting, because actually no, it's like sex is so much more than that. And when you really like allow yourself to have those like really, really meaningful healing experiences, like that's the kind of sex that you
like definitely. And I think there's so much within this topic to unpack, but I think that like I might need to have another conversation with you, get you to come be a guest on another episode to unpack some of these other topics that are running through my head now. But I'm aware of our time, and I don't want to take the entire day with this. So I'm just going to ask you a few last questions. The first one is, what is one resource that you would recommend to others? Book, podcast, a movie, a website?
I'll go with the one that's come to my mind first. I have to say it is very much marketed to women, so I'm sorry. I mean, men can absolutely read it. It's so translatable to men as well, but it's called Mastering Your Mean Girl. And it's like a really beautiful book, particularly for, I guess, a younger generation, like teens, 20s, Saturn return vibes. To really help you master that inner critic and, get on top of your mental health game and really sit in the driver's seat of your life and get out of that victim mentality. And, I think health and wellness starts between the ears, and we can't even talk about sexuality until you've sort of got a handle on that. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the title of that. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Or Mastering Your Mean Boy. I don't know if you're a guy, that also works.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that there's that mean girl or guy inside of a lot of us. So that aspect that needs to be seen and allowed and explored as well. So
yeah.
That's a good one. What is your one go-to tip? Like if someone asks you, and you have to say one thing, like what is that one thing that you share?
Totally. So people ask me all the time, like, what's my best sex tip ever? And it would be meditation. Like, I really believe that meditation is like the best sex tool on the planet, and it's completely free. And not only will it completely revolutionize your relationship to your mental health, to your physical health, to your relationship with your environment, the planet, but it will also revolutionize your sex life and help you stay in the body more and enjoy that pleasure more. And
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm always up for promoting meditation, and I'm becoming more connected. So that's a wonderful one. And changing gears a little bit, I'm going to you and your current experience. What has been your latest small act of kindness?
So at the moment I'm trying to, I went to a community mental health event last night. So I'm trying to, because I'm not like a registered or licensed counselor or therapist, there's a bit of a glass ceiling as to, you know, how I can support the community at the moment. You know, like it's been a big year. It's 2020 and a lot of people are needing help. So yeah, I'm just trying to find ways to offer my support, you know, in an appropriate way, I guess. So yeah, hopefully tee up some voluntary time at the women's something, but yeah, it's a bit of a work in progress at the moment. Yeah, did that answer the question? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's
okay. I pick flowers for anyone? No.
It is, you know, like even in the action of thinking of volunteering, it's a like very cool thing. So hopefully that actually actualizes and that works.
Yes, I mean something will come of it, and something will happen no matter what it is. So yeah.
And lastly, what is the one thing that you wish everyone knew?
That's the quality of our relationship to ourselves will reflect out into the world. So, you know, we're talking about climate change at the moment. We're talking about, you know, all of these like really big, you know, global crises that are sort of unfolding. And, you know, stopping plastic and all of these solutions, which are great. I'm not saying they're not needed, but I'd really love more emphasis on self-love being a foundation to the response to these circumstances, because when we, you know, cultivate a beautiful relationship with ourselves, you know, we want to have a really harmonious relationship with the planet and with our peers and with our community, regardless of whether they see things the same way as we do or not. So yeah,
that's a good one. And you know, I always talk about that from connection. Everything starts from connection, and if I connect, then everything comes from that place. I will want to do the right thing for others and for the environment. So yeah, that's such a big one. What's coming from the inside out, really nice.
Yeah.
And finishing, how can people find you? How can people work with you?
Yes, yeah. I mean, like Instagram is really my favorite place to show up and offer value. I'm like always, I've got a strong Instagram game. So if you feel intrigued to get to know me a bit better, definitely go there. My Instagram name is Laura Ellen, LauraEllen. Yeah, I have a website as well. It's called www.laura.ellen.com. I have a podcast. It's called the Sexual Wellness Podcast. It's on Spotify, iTunes, you know, all of the podcasting apps. There's about 70 plus episodes on there. I'm about to launch season 2 as well. So there is a ton of content on there that will, you know, I get a lot of feedback about the podcast, and I know that it's had a profound impact on a lot of people's lives. So if you're feeling like you want to dive in and learn a little bit more, I highly recommend that you go check it out, the Sexual Wellness Podcast. And yeah, from there, reach out. I'm always open to hear from people. I love it when people message me either on Instagram or they email me through my site. So just reach out. I love it so much.
Nice. And we'll have the links on the show notes so that it's easy for you to connect with Laura. And I'd love to know, and I'd love to see on the comments of this episode, what did you learn about it? What resonated with you? How is your relationship with yourself and with your sexuality? And and some of these topics that we explored. And I'm really looking forward to actually having a second conversation for some other episode and deep dive into some of the topics that I didn't get a chance to ask. But a pleasure, Laura, to be here with you talking finally. And I'm sure that we're going to have many more conversations, and I'm sure that people are going to take actually a lot of inspiration from what you're sharing and from your podcast. I have heard some of the episodes, and like I hope that people go and check it out. So thank you so much for taking the time and for the work that you're doing. And I'm sure that I'm going to see you sometime soon. So once again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and thank you for having me on the show. And I can't wait to see you again soon. Hopefully you can come down and visit.
Yes, I will. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.